Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Well, the Never Kevin Republican rebels are now reaping some of the benefits of the deal they struck to finally give Speaker McCarthy the gavel after 15 long votes. Several members have snagged plum committee assignments, giving the far-right caucus more power and influence. They include Byron Donalds and Anna Paulina Luna of Florida, Paul Gosar, Scott of Arizona, Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, Lauren Boebert of Colorado, who will all now serve on the Key Oversight Committee. Mark Green of Tennessee will chair the Homeland Security Committee, where freshman Eli Crane of Arizona also received a seat. Andrew Clyde of Georgia, Michael Cloud of Texas will serve on the very, very sought-after Appropriations Committee. That's where all the spending comes out of. House Republicans are also using their new power to punish Democrats they do not like, aiming to pull Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, and Ilhan Omar off of their current committee assignments. Now, after quite a bit of speculation, scandal-ridden Congressman George Santos, who we will have more about later in the show, is getting two spots, one on the Small Business Committee and one on the Science Committee. And 2 years after being stripped of all of her committee assignments, Marjorie Taylor Greene is celebrating her return, writing of her upcoming work on oversight, quote, "Joe Biden, be prepared. We are going to uncover every corrupt business dealing, every foreign entanglement, every abuse of power, and every check cut for the big guy." So what does all this tell us about the trajectory of the modern MAGA Republican Party? How do we get to this point where rebels, serial liars, conspiracy theorists are now members of good standing and rewarded with committee assignments while they see their political enemies punished? Well, part of it is just the way it goes when one side wins the majority, but the story here actually stretches back, and it's worth retelling it, because it begins with a former Republican member of Congress from Iowa. Remember him? Steve King. Now, Steve King was, in some ways, Donald Trump before Donald Trump. I mean, all the way back in 2006 when I was covering the immigration debate, actually. King was Mr. Build the Wall. He made this little model that he put on the House floor. See with the barbed wire there? And for years, King said all sorts of racist and offensive things, from talking about the size of the calves of immigrants, quote, hauling 75 pounds of marijuana across the desert, to comments about how we, quote, can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies. This kept on going until King gave an interview to the New York Times in January of 2019. That was just after winning re-election for the 8th time. When questioned about his previous comments, King told the reporter, quote, white nationalist, white supremacist, Western civilization, how did that language become offensive? Why did I sit in classes teaching me about the merits of our history and our civilization? Wait, what? Well, that was it. Finally, the Republican Party decided Steve King had gone too far, that he was a problem politically. Optics-wise, they had to deal with. So then House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was explicit about the fact that King's words in that quote in the paper of record were unacceptable and that he would be disciplined.
I've watched on the other side that they do not take action when their members say something like this. Action will be taken. I'm having a serious conversation with Congressman Steve King on his future and role in this Republican Party.
What does that mean?
Because as a leader, there is a number of things you'll see that has taken place. But I will not stand back as a leader of this party, believing in this nation that all are created equal, that stands or continues to stand and have any role with us.
All right, so Kevin McCarthy goes on a Sunday show. He brings his serious face. He's locked in. He's really had enough. Days later, McCarthy announced King's punishment, that Steve King was being pulled off of his committee assignment.
The steering committee just met, and we agreed to we will not be seating Steve King on any committees in the 116th Congress. It was a unanimous decision from steering. In light of the comments, these are not the first time we've heard these comments. That is not the party of Lincoln, and is definitely not America. All people are created equal in America, and we want to take a very strong stance about that.
Okay, now, we got to make a note here, right? This is while Donald Trump is president of the United States, right? So the whole thing is preposterous. Like, Donald Trump is trying to ban 1 billion Muslims and talking about S-hole countries and go back to where they came from about American members of Congress, all right? So this is all some weird thing focused on Steve King. But that said, in this instance, the Republican Party, led by Kevin McCarthy, did set a precedent for their members in the House that there is a line that you cannot cross. They were very clear. Steve King's beliefs were beyond the pale. They were unacceptable in their party politics or on their committees. They set that precedent. Not me, not anyone else. They did. Now, the party then went on to really put their money where their mouth was. They did not support King in his next race. A lot of money was raised for his challenger, who was a Republican primary challenger, who defeated him in 2020. Steve King, now no longer in Congress. But of course, Steve King's politics are the base of the entire Republican Party. And like mushrooms blooming on the stump of a tree, you can get rid of one Steve King, but the conditions left in his wake will produce more and more and more and more politicians like him. The environment supports them. So now you have, well, you've got the retired ex-president who wants to run again, right? He's one person that has views like Steve King. But now you've also got, more to the point, a whole caucus full of King-aligned folks, including, notably, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar. While the Democrats were in the majority in the House, Greene and Gosar also engaged in violent and hateful rhetoric. Marjorie Taylor Greene regularly spread conspiracy theories suggesting the Parkland school shooting was a false flag, that no plane hit the Pentagon on 9/11. In 2019, she made Islamophobic remarks about Ilhan Omar, an elected member of Congress.
There is an Islamic invasion into our government offices right now, okay? They are, you saw after midterm elections, we saw so many Muslims elected. I don't know the exact number, but there were quite a few. We had that woman out of Minnesota. Now she's going into Congress and she's got to wear a head covering. You know, they want to put their hand on the Quran and be sworn in. No, you have to be sworn in on the Bible.
Point of fact, you don't have to be sworn in on the Bible. But around the same time, Greene repeatedly made comments about executing Democratic politicians, including then Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
She's a traitor to our country. She's guilty of treason. She took an oath to protect American citizens and uphold our laws. And she gives aid and comfort to our enemies who illegally invade our land. That's what treason is. Exactly. And by our law, representatives and senators can be kicked out and no longer serve in our government. And it's a crime punishable by death, is what treason is. Nancy Pelosi is guilty of treason, and we want her out of our government.
Every time I look at that clip, when she does the whole lead up, you know, treason punishable by death, and then she finishes on Nancy Pelosi is guilty of treason, and we want her, and you're like, out of our government. Okay. So that's Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay. So those comments, more like them, resurfaced in early 2021, and the House voted to strip Greene of her committee assignments. Later that year, Paul Gosar faced the same fate after posting an edited video that depicted him killing fellow member of Congress Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and attacking the Democratic president. Now, when Democrats kicked those two Republicans off their committees, they were enforcing the Steve King precedent. They were enforcing the precedent McCarthy himself had set, that there was an ideology and a rhetoric that was clearly beyond the pale. But many Republicans who weren't doing themselves this time were furious, and they began plotting their revenge. Revenge they are now executing against Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, and Ilhan Omar. And somehow, there was no one on their own side the Republicans think meets the Steve King standard that they themselves set. That is despite the fact that Kevin McCarthy's new right-hand woman is the same person who spread vile conspiracy theories, talked about executing Democrats, and received this introduction from avowed white nationalist Nick Fuentes.
And now they're going on about Russia and Vladimir Putin is Hitler, and they say that's not a good thing. And can we give a round of applause for Russia? Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. We are honored, we are humbled and excited to welcome to the stage right now for our first speech, and we'd love to get to know her much better. I think this is going to be the beginning of something great. The representative from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Remember Nick Fuentes, the guy who dined with Kanye and Donald Trump, the guy who's like pro-Nazi, questions the Holocaust happening, like avowed white nationalist, that guy who introduced that same woman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who now has a seat on the Oversight Committee and the Homeland Security Committee. So that's where we've ended up with the Republican Steve King precedent here in 2023.